Welcome to DT Kane's Epic Fantasy Book Club. I'm DT Kane, author of the epic fantasy series The Aggresfar Saga and the spoken books Uprising. Each week, I read from one of my novels, discuss my writing process, answer your questions, and have general discussions about fantasy fiction. It's like a book club, except I do all the work for you. Find show notes, info about all my novels, and much more at dtkane.com. Here's the show. Hello everyone, welcome back to DT Kane's Epic Fantasy Book Club. Today is Sunday, November 27th, 2022, as I record this, which is episode 19 of season 2 of the podcast and episode 46 overall. Happy holidays. Thanksgiving is now behind us here in the U.S., so can officially start wishing everyone happy holidays here. Now, hope you all had a peaceful and pleasant and restful and delicious holiday spent with family and friends. I ran my annual hometown turkey trot Thanksgiving morning, ran my fastest 5K to date, so yeah, yay for me. If you're a newsletter subscriber, you saw a photo of me at the finish line. Then I went over my wife's side of the family, did dinner at her uncle's house, and then my parents hosted at my house for dinner. So, good day overall. Saw some friends I haven't seen in a little while. So good times all around. But despite the holiday, I am still rolling along with National Novel Writing Month. In fact, I'm proud to announce that I am a champion for the second year in a row. I broke 50,000 words a couple of days ago, which is the goal for National Novel Writing Month. So that's exciting. And overall, the first draft of Into the Dragon's Maw, which is part 5 of the Spoken Books Uprising, that's crossed the 70,000 word mark now, and I am plowing onward toward the end. It's looking like that'll probably be about as long as part 4, Declaimer's Stand. So, right around the 100,000 word mark. So, stay tuned for more info on that in the coming weeks. Only other personal news here is the box set of parts 1, 2, and 3 of the Spoken Books Uprising. The e-box set, I should say. It is not a physical box set at this time, just ebooks. But that is out in the world now. You can purchase it from, all the normal ebook retailers, or you can also purchase it directly from me, from my PayHip store. PayHip is a website that kind of gives small businesses the opportunity to sell direct to their customers rather than through a distributor like Amazon or Kobo or Barnes & Noble or something like that. Upside of that for me is I get to keep more of the royalties at no extra cost to you. It just, instead of paying Amazon their 30% take, there's a small service fee. So that allows me to offer the box set at less cost to you if you buy directly from me. Easiest way to find that link is just to go to dtkane.com/books, or my homepage as well. We'll probably have a post at dtkane.com. In addition to the text of the 3 novels there's also 2 original essays that I wrote about my inspiration for the Spoken Books Uprising series, and there's also original artwork of Baz, Deliritus, and Rox. So if any of that interests you, you can go check that out. Regular price of that's going to be $5.99, and it'll be on sale for $1 or $2 cheaper than that directly from me. So that's that, and this week we're doing an analysis episode of chapters 15 through 21. We'll be back with narrating Declaimer's discovery next week. So why don't we dive right in here to chapter 15. So this is the chapter following the duel that Deliritus and Baz had with Farston in his speaker, where Baz was where he was knocked out at the end of chapter 14 So we switch perspective back to Deliritus for the second time in this book, and we see Deliritus almost get killed by a cityless raider with a giant hammer, right? But Rox, of course, comes to the rescue and puts a quick end to that. And then Deliritus realizes that Baz is nowhere to be seen, and he has in fact been captured. Interesting here, we do see, as little as Deliritus and Baz get along, sometimes we do see, deep down, Deliritus does kind of care about Baz here. He even stands up to Farston saying, we have to go help Baz. He's being driven away on this boat into the lake that they're on the shore of. But Deliritus does not Deliritus does not withstand Farston for long here, though, right? We kind of see how brutal he is. He's playing with this other cityless who attacked him. He seems to be purposely drawing out the fight. He keeps cutting him, but not mortally. And then finally, he pulls out a knife and guts him. So not a nice man here, though. I don't think that comes as a shock to anyone here. There's clearly a dark side to Duke Farston here. And then we learn a lot of information here in Chapter 15 in kind of a relatively short period of time. First, Farston knows that Octavianal told Deliritus to oppose him at the Congress. So Farston is certainly well informed here, and that is bursting Deliritus's bubble here. Remember, his father had told him to, kind of be a pain for Farston to make him look bad at the Congress, because Duke Octavianal has his sights on taking over the chairmanship of the Triumvirate Congress when the next election cycle comes around. But looks like Octavianal is on to that ploy here. Interesting, though, that Farston does note that Octavianal is a thorn in his side. So, despite the apparent power that Farston has, he does view Deliritus's father as a threat. And that's not elaborated on, but you have to think of a man like Farston thinks Octavianal is a threat. That drives home just how dangerous a man Duke Octavianal is in his own right as well. And then the last thing here, Farston notes, the only reason he accepted Deliritus as Erstwhile's representative was because he wanted Baz, and now Baz is gone, so Deliritus better tread carefully here. What is it about Baz that Farston is so interested in, and why was he acting back in Chapter 14 like he knew or he knows who Baz is, like prior from this meeting that occurred here in Part 2? Lots of unanswered questions here about Farston thus far. But Chapter 15 ends with Deliritus, however unhappily, accepting that they're not going to be able to get Baz back. So we move on to Chapter 16, and we return back to Baz's perspective. Him and Lyanna are on a boat. It's actually a steamboat. You may have recognized some of the description of the propulsion system that the boat uses. That's loosely describing how a steamboat works. They're up against a box that's emitting steam, so there's a fire going on in there, and that steam produced by the fire runs the engine. Or I don't know if engine is the right word for a steamboat, but you get the idea. I'm not going to explain to you all the detailed mechanics of a steam engine. You can certainly go look that up on Wikipedia if that interests you. So we meet Boost and Marst, two new characters here. They seem slightly incompetent, right? Marst is a big fat young man. Baz is not very flattering in his description of Marst. His pudge has pudge, I think Baz says. And interesting, though, Marst also only has one arm. So, we've heard of some terrible injuries that can go on in some of these factories we saw back in Erstwhile, where the ink is made. And now we're going to a paper mill. So, the paper mill is what's on this island out in the center of Fable. Or out in the center of the Shallows, which is the lake, and then the island in the center of that lake is Fable, and there's a paper mill there. So maybe he sustained that injury at that mill. So that's Marst, and then the other character here is Boost. He's the one with the shaved head and kind of the green the green mohawk is his only hair. He kind of seems to be the leader of the two. Marst is very skittish and saying things when he shouldn't be. Boost at least has a knife and is threatening Baz and Lyanna. Baz doesn't seem to feel overly threatened by them, but at the same time he realizes he probably can't drive this boat that they're on, or if Boost does actually know how to use that knife, Baz is probably not going to beat him in a direct physical confrontation. So him and Lyanna kind of accept that they're going to have to see what happens, once the boat stops at its destination. We do see Baz, he nearly lets a slip in front of Lyanna that he knows what Seekers are. Remember, that's information he gleaned at Undertome, so he can't be revealing that to Lyanna, or else he'd be revealing he'd have a lot of explaining to do. As we're going to see, he's going to have a lot of explaining to do to Lyanna anyway, but hold that thought. For now, we do get a nice little moment here where him and Lyanna are holding hands while Baz falls asleep. Certainly, I don't think they directly address it, but they have been captured, and it's uncertain where they're being taken. So there is some fear underlying this scene here, and they take some comfort in each other. We've certainly been hinting at a deeper relationship between the two of them, and we're seeing that develop here a little more. Then the boat finally docks, and like I said, we go to the paper mill at Fable. A couple of guards come and escort Baz and Lyanna into the mill, and we see at a very high level, there's these big vats when they enter. That's kind of the first stage of making paper here. You take wood pulp, which is wood chips. Basically, you throw wood chips into a pressure cooker with chemicals added, and those chemicals dissolve the cellulose fibers that hold the wood together. Those fibers are called lignin, and that resulting pulp is kind of the main ingredient of paper. And once you add those chemicals and then the steam in the pressure cooker, that, like I said, causes the lignin to dissolve so you can form it into sheets. And then you wash that resulting solution with bleach to purify the remaining lignin. So again, that's why paper mills, or at least one of the reasons why paper mills are deemed very undesirable to be anywhere near where people actually live. That whole bleaching and chemical process is not good to be around, and that's why Baz and Lyanna get a surprise when they inhale deeply in there, right? There's a bunch of chemicals in the air. And then once you've done that, you use a screen to get the residual water out of the treated wood pulp, and then you press it and dry it, and that's, very high level how you make paper, and we see kind of those steps of the process going on as they enter the mill. And then, of course, the surprise at the end of the chapter, Emma shows up. Well, you'll recall Emma was the Madame Scrivener Tessa's daughter from book 1. The one who originally captured Baz and brought him to Undertome. So she is here posing as the Millmaster of Fable, moving right into chapter 17 here. So she appears to be running the show here, which is interesting because the paper mill is supposed to be something that's controlled by the conservators, right? We've seen a few offhand references to the pilgrimages that conservators take out to the mill at Fable. This used to be where all the paper for spoken books was made, so it was a kind of a big deal. There's that whole town at Paper Ferry that kind of was built up around the paper trade, and then we saw a few chapters back how that town has fallen into ruin since, they still need paper for regular writing, but no one is making new spoken books anymore. So the paper market has crashed here in oration. But it's interesting that Citylus seem to be running the mill, even though the conservators are under the impression that they control the mill. We basically learned that Tessa, again Emma's mother, the leader of the folks over at Undertome, the keepers at Undertome, seems she has infiltrated the mill, and basically everyone who works there is now a member of her organization of keepers. So that's interesting, kind of hiding out in plain sight here. Of course, Emma and Lyanna are immediately butting heads here. I would say Emma is probably only marginally successful in her cover as the mill master. She explains why her people attacked Baz and Lyanna by saying they thought Baz and Lyanna were Sidulous, and they were trying to protect the mill, which is sort of plausible, right? Because Emma says, well, we saw all these spells that were being thrown around on the shore, and there are all these rumors of the Sidulous cusses who can cast spells. So Lyanna seems to at least partially accept that. For now, though, she certainly doesn't like Emma's attitude toward her. She gets more upset as well when, she learns that there are no horses at Fable that, Emma can lend them to, get them back on track to get to fortune quickly. Lyanna gets a little lip here from Emma. It's basically like, well, the conservatory has never decided that we needed any horses, Madam Conservator. So again, just the butting of heads here between the two ladies, and Baz is kind of just trying to stay out of it, because every time he tries to talk, he gets dirty looks from one or both of them. So he's certainly caught in the middle here. And then we get we transition to kind of the second part of chapter 17. Lyanna goes off to get her injury. She got punched in the face by Boost on the boat. So she goes off for a few minutes to have that attended to. So Emma and Baz get to talk privately. We learn that Emma has essentially run away from home. She left Tome shortly after Baz departed there, because she wants to go look for the Declaimer's transcendence as well, just like Baz. Recall that she was upset when her mother gave Baz that quest to go find the Declaimer's transcendence, because it's kind of her family, her family rite of passage, or, it's been passed down through the generations that her family is the one who's supposed to be looking for the Declaimer's transcendence, because it was originally her ancestor who saved that small fragment that they currently have of the transcendence, the last line. He'll speak the words to set us free. And when Lyanna found out that her mother actually knew where the transcendence is and told Baz, but not her, she was upset about that. So she is going off on her own now. And she seems to have told everyone else here at Fable that she is a seeker of transcendence, which is, remember, that special rank that's bestowed on the people who leave Tome to go look for the Declaimer's transcendence. And in fact, that is the rank that Baz has actually been given by Tessa, but Emma does not officially have that rank, but she's told everyone, and they know she is the daughter of the rebel leader, so they've kind of made her the de facto leader here at the mill, it seems like. Her plan had been to capture a reader and use the reader to get her into Liamina library. She apparently had an influencer and was thinking of capturing the reader and influencing him into getting her into the library to go search for the transcendence. And of course, she told Boost and Marst, we learned to, attack the one with the hat, right? So they attacked Baz. But of course, it turns out that, the one wearing the hat here was not a reader. It was Baz instead, so they captured him. And let's see. So Emma's plan here has kind of been foiled unwittingly. What are the chances that you'd be walking by in your hat, Baz, when I told them that? Kind of a bit of a comical scene there, where Marst is like, you told us to get the one with the hat. And then we do see this is obviously going to be a problem here as we move on, right? But Lyanna is an issue because she is a conservator who is actually, they are an enemy. They're right up there with the readers as an enemy of the Sidulous / the Keepers, the rebels under Tome. So originally Emma is thinking that they're just going to have to kill Lyanna, but Baz convinces Emma not to harm her. Baz and Lyanna are, at least friends, if not more. But, Baz does make the good point that, well, if Lyanna disappears, it's certainly going to get back to the conservatory that there was a Sidulous attack on the shores of Fable, and someone's going to come poking around here. But, if Liana goes free, then the worst that's really going to happen is she's going to complain about the incompetence of the supposed leaders here at the paper mill. So that seems to at least convince Liana, or convince Emma, at least temporarily, though she does say that she's going to have to clear that plan with Maeve. We don't know who Maeve is at this point, but she seems to be someone who is above Emma in the chain of command here. We'll meet Maeve in a few chapters here rather shortly. Interesting. Emma also seems to be bothered that Baz gets along with Liana. Now, is that just because conservators are supposed to be the enemy, or is there some other reason here? Maybe there's a little jealousy here on the part of Emma. We'll have to keep an eye on that. Is Baz getting entangled in a love triangle here? Perhaps. And then we get the references to down below. So Emma did reveal that even though they do not have horses, she does have an idea for how she can get them to fortune with plenty of time to spare for the beginning of the Triumvirate Congress, and that is down below. Liana does not seem to want Baz to go down there, but they seem to have little choice because they have to get to the Congress somehow. So we move on to Chapter 18. Liana rejoins our group here, and we start to see her suspicions rising. She's certainly suspicious of Emma here. I don't like how she looks at you, Baz, like she knows something about you that she doesn't want anyone else to know. Well, that's certainly true, right? Liana is not an idiot here. She can see how Emma is treating Baz, and Emma does, in fact, know that Baz is an orator, or a cuss is what Liana would call him. He can speak and read. She also notices that Liana calls him Baz, and she points out that no one calls you Baz, right? So, and then Emma rejoins them again, and they can't really hash it out any further at that point. But, this is going to be an issue, obviously. So, but carrying on here for now, Emma brings them to an elevator, a lift, but that's what it is, an elevator, right, to bring them down below, whatever the hell is down there. We'll see in a minute. First, Baz is about to get on the elevator, right, and then he kind of sees Marst still being all submissive over in the corner, and he, kind of yells at him and tells him, look, you're probably the biggest person wherever you are, right? Have a little confidence, or pretend to be confident until you are. And this actually seems to give Marst a bit of motivation. Maybe this is the fire he needed lit under his ass. Someone just to show a little confidence in him, or tell him that it's possible for him to be confident, or at least pretend to be confident, and that maybe that'll make you feel better. It also seems that Emma has been spreading rumors about Baz being a dragon rider. Marst is like, oh well. After Baz tells him to pretend to be confident, he's like, "Oh, is that how you managed to fly a dragon?" And of course, Baz is worried that Liana is going to have heard that comment, but thankfully she was already in the elevator and didn't hear it. But again, so we kind of saw Tax earlier, kind of creating this cult of personality around Baz with the snakes, the rebels back in erstwhile, and now it seems Emma has kind of been building up Baz as well. After she sees the effect Baz has on Marst, he actually, he never really thought of, ever having a chance to ride on a dragon. But after the famous dragon rider Baz tells him he can, Marst seems to maybe, be turning a corner here. And, Emma mutters, maybe Mother was right. So it seems, Tessa, the leader of the rebels, has ideas of what Baz can be here. So, wheels are turning. Baz is part of schemes that, he may not even be privy to at this point. There's this larger movement going on that Baz has really only touched the surface of here so far. But finally, Liana, Emma, and Baz get into the elevator to go down below, and as the elevator begins to lower, Baz begins to hear voices in his head, and then we transition right into chapter 19. Baz realizes that he's the only one who can hear these voices, And he is very alarmed, but he kind of just plays it off when he realizes that Liana and Emma can't hear them because he doesn't want them to think that he's crazy. But maybe we'll recall that Baz has heard voices in his head before, right? When he was casting shadow spells and when he went out on the platform and faced the Dark Ones at the end of part 1. So, what is it about going down below that is triggering him to hear these voices again? We don't quite know yet, but let's keep going, and we will slowly see. We find out why Liana doesn't want Baz to go down below, because there is a shadow ink factory down there, and remember how the conservators guard the secrets of how to make elemental ink. That's kind of like their one thing that they hold over the readers' heads. The readers need the ink to restore their spoken books when they lose their power, and only the conservators know how to make it. So, Liana doesn't really want Baz seeing the inside of a factory. This is skipping ahead a little, but, she lets slip that, in Chapter 20, she lets slip that the people who are recruited to work in ink factories are not ever permitted to leave in order to protect the secrets of making ink. So, that's kind of shocking to Baz, right? Basically, the conservators are, using slave labor, right? And, it's at least heavily implied that they are killing these factory workers rather than ever let them leave with potential secrets of how to make the ink. We do notice that the voices get louder in Baz's head when he looks at some of these vats, which, as we've learned, are full of shadow ink. So there seems to be some association with being close to shadow ink that causes the voices to ramp up inside of Baz's head here. So again, the Dark Ones seem to be connected with Shadow somehow, and since Baz has been exposed to them, whenever he gets close to Shadow, or at least Shadow ink, he starts to hear them more. So you can bet that this is probably going to be a problem for Baz as we move on in the story here. Let's see, what else is there to touch on here? Oh, how do we actually make shadow ink? So we distill the scales of shadow breathers. So shadow breathers are the shadow variant of dragons. So obviously a fire breather is a fire breathing dragon, and a shadow breather is a shadow breathing dragon. Maybe we can't envision that here at this point, but we have Baz gives us a pretty good description of them at some point. Let me see. I think I have that written down here close at hand that we can just read for you real quick. Yeah, here he is. They are creatures of the elsewhere. Yeah, they are as much poisonous mist as tangible beast, living in the world's dark places. So, kind of some sort of ethereal creature maybe, but, we see Liana's reaction, being like, well, we can't go down that tunnel, right? And Emma's like, well, actually, that was how I was planning to get you to Fortune so quickly. That's how chapter 19 ends. We're going to walk right into the lair of the Shadow Breathers. Just a quick aside, kind of the method of making ink that I sketched out quickly in chapter 19 with all the vats and machines is, loosely modeled after how sugarcane is refined. You'll recall that the Haitian slave revolution was a big influence on some of the storylines I have in the spoken books Uprising. I've spoken about that on the podcast before, and sugarcane was one of the main crops that slave labor was used to farm and process in Haiti in the 18th century. So, you had to boil sugarcane and kind of create a syrup out of it before you can refine it into table sugar. So you got all these large, boiling vats, and then the vats with the, the points on the bottom. You filter those to get to separate the solids from the liquids. So, again, I'm not trying to be scientific about anything here, but just some of the stuff that I described in chapter 19 in the ink factory is is modeled after the sugarcane refining. And I guess I'll just say, too, we did see earlier Marston only had the one arm, and that was a very common thing that happened with slaves. In Haiti, there's lots of heavy machinery and grinders and, heavy things that could fall on slaves, or, their clothes could get caught in the gear, and, limbs would be mangled. So, Marst having one arm is kind of a reference to that as well, kind of the bad conditions that, these laborers are subjected to. Right, so moving on to chapter 20 here, we finally meet Maeve, who is a midwife, which seems an odd title for her because she also seems to be kind of like the leader here, right? Emma is supposed to be the mill master, but she clearly answers to Maeve. She's an older woman, though despite appearing old, Baz notes at least, or I think multiple times that, she doesn't move like an old lady, right? Or, despite her wrinkly appearance, she doesn't actually look particularly old either. So she's got kind of a contradictory appearance here. We do learn that, she had given, or she at least had told Emma that Emma was responsible for making a plan to find the Declaimer's transcendence, or at least making a plan. She doesn't explicitly say it was related to the Declaimer's transcendence, but you can kind of imply that, and Maeve is savvy enough to know that she can't talk about the Declaimer's transcendence in front of a conservator like Lyanna. But of course it turns out, that Maeve seems to have her own plan here, and it doesn't really matter that Emma's plan did not work out. Emma, of course, is a little taken aback by that, but Maeve quickly silences her. She is clearly a no-nonsense kind of person here. She is not hesitant to show that she's not overly impressed with Baz, and then she goes so far as to ask Emma if she's sure she doesn't want to throw Lyanna into an ink vat before they leave for Fortune. She clearly doesn't want to deal with a conservator interfering with their plans here. But for now, Lyanna is staying with us. And Maeve, let's drop it. Well, she is planning to reach Fortune by the next evening because she has an appointment there with a high-ranking official. She has to do her midwifery, which is interesting because Fable is supposed to be more than a week's ride away from Fortune. So what is this conveyance that's going to get them to Fortune so quickly? We're about to find out. Just a couple other quick notes. We start to see why maybe it's useful to have a midwife on your side here. Maeve apparently is a pretty well-known one in Fortune. She has access to many of the libraries, including Liamina Library. So the implication here is certainly that she can get into libraries where, many other, most illits and speakers are not going to have free access to the libraries of the city of Fortune, but Maeve does by virtue of her position as a midwife. So certainly that's going to be interesting. She also has these mysterious knots tied into her belt. We don't know what those signify at this point, but just keep those in mind. Finally, we learn what it is that's going to get them to Fortune so quickly. It is called an iron dragon, and let me just read the description here of it to you. Let's see. Here we go. Page 174 of the print copy of Declaimer's Discovery. About a dozen feet below the platform's edge was what looked like a road with wagon ruts in it, except the ruts appeared to be steel beams with boards laid across them. This road headed off into a narrow tunnel that was quickly consumed by darkness. However, far more interesting than the strange road was what sat atop it, directly in front of the platform. It vaguely resembled an enormous wagon, though the only thing that really caused Baz to think of a wagon was that it had wheels, and Baz had never seen anything other than a cart or a wagon with wheels. It more closely resembled the body of a dragon, or perhaps a worm was a more apt description, as it didn't have any limbs. It was made all of jet black iron, and an orange glow emanated from within it, just like a dragon's flame. Steam rose from a chimney located about where the dragon's snout would have started. That snout ended in a narrow tip like an axe's edge, as if whoever had constructed this bizarre vehicle expected it to encounter enemies in its path and cleave them in two. So I hope you get from that description that this is a train. That was an interesting passage to write, kind of describing a train without actually calling it a train, because, Baz obviously does not know what a train is, so can just use that word. Hope you found that interesting. But yes, there is a train down here, so that's how they're going to get through this tunnel with the Shadow Breathers. They're going to be inside a train. And of course, we learned that this train was built by the Enigma himself at Halifax Erstwhile's request, because he wanted a quicker way to get between Erstwhile and Fortune City. Emma says there appeared to be plans to build some above ground too, but apparently the scribes could simply transport themselves from place to place at will, so building iron dragons above ground never became a priority. So we hop aboard the Oration Express here in Chapter 21. The train is off through the tunnels to Fortune. Quickly we get a look inside the cab of the Iron Dragon, or the train, where the furnace is and the coal. Emma's already in there sweating away, and Baz is kind of staring at her, and Emma seems to be inviting those stares a little, right? And Baz quickly looks away, but he's very confused because usually women are upset when you're caught staring at them, right? But Emma did not seem to be. So, again, Emma seems to have some sort of interest in Baz here. Just like Lyanna seems to have an interest in Baz as well. So Baz just getting himself into all sorts of trouble here. So him and Lyanna go into the next car, which is kind of like the passenger car. There are kind of cabins where you can just hang out in chairs and beds. Baz doesn't really want to hang out with Lyanna, though, because she seems to want to interrogate him about Emma. So instead he goes into the rear of the train, kind of the cargo car here, and he notices some new spoken books. That's a thing, right? You're not supposed to be able to make new spoken books, but we learned in part 1 that the rebels down in Undertome do know how to write new books. So these seem to be some newly created volumes, courtesy of the rebels there at Tome. Baz takes one of them off the shelf, which turns out to be a book of shadow. And I think this is, a little interesting, obviously I have not written new languages here. I just kind of describe the words of the languages of the Trinity. But, just this emphasis here, the languages of the spoken books don't really have grammar in the traditional sense. They kind of just the words evoke feelings or ideas, so you kind of have to loosely interpret them. So, the title of this book is something like Return to Emptiness or Leaving All Behind. Baz is roughly translating here. He flips open the book and is thumbing through it, and it seems to temporarily take over his mind, right? Like he can't control himself from continuing to look through it, and the train suddenly jerks and makes him drop the book. And Baz is like, geez, if that hadn't happened, I'm not sure, it felt like the book was trying to steal my soul or something. So certainly some foreboding going on here around that book. Baz just leaves it lying on the floor. He doesn't want to touch it anymore. So again, there's something going on with the element of shadow here. Baz has had bad experiences with it in the past, and now it seems whenever he is close to it, he hears these voices in his head. So certainly setting something up here. And, I'm setting up all these bad things about the element of shadow, right? And we're heading into a tunnel where shadow dragons apparently live. So, keep that in mind. Obviously, this is all going somewhere. So Baz kind of runs away from that shadow book and the cargo part of the train, and finally him and Lyanna have their confrontation, and Lyanna comes right out and says, she doesn't believe Baz when he says he doesn't know who Emma is. She reiterates, she saw how Emma reacted upon seeing him. She willingly returned his hat, right? Even though she can obviously tell that Baz is a speaker, she should know that Baz shouldn't be wearing a hat. And the big one here is you let her call you Baz. Remember we saw in the private conversation between Emma and Baz that, Baz is kind of tricked into letting her call him Baz, right? But, Liana doesn't know that, and she's kind of offended, right? Because, they're supposed to be friends, Liana and Baz are, but he doesn't let her call him Baz. You only let people you're intimate with call you Baz, and I thought I was intimate with you. They get into this. They kind of get into this fight here. She ends up slapping him, and she tries to slap him again, and Baz, grabs her hand, and they look into each other's eyes, and then they kiss. Maybe finally, maybe some of you have been waiting for this. There's certainly been some tension building between them, and it seems like they're just about to finally come to terms with how they truly feel about one another. And then the car shakes, and there is a roar from outside, and they are thrown to the floor. And apparently there is something dangerous outside. The train has stopped. Again, like I said, there's some creature roaring out there, and that's where chapter 21 ends. And that brings us up to date on the reading here. So, hope you enjoyed that discussion and getting, a refresher on where we're at and some of my insight into the past 6 chapters we've read. Let's see. What are our assignments going to be for next week? Just thumbing through my print copy here. We'll certainly read chapter 22. How many pages is that? About 8 pages. And then chapter 23. Yeah, we'll read chapters 22 and 23 of Declaimer's Discovery next week. We'll find out just what it is outside the train that has caused it to stop. And then some of Baz's secrets are going to finally come back and bite him in one way or another. So tune in next week for that. Let's see. I don't have a fantasy quote this week. It was Thanksgiving, and I was keeping up on my my NaNoWriMo writing, so the quote kind of fell by the wayside here this week, but we'll be back with regularly scheduled programming next week with our fantasy quote of the week. Regular edition of the newsletter will go out next Friday. And like I said, we'll be reading chapters 22 and 23 on next week's episode. And remember, if you're interested, you can pick up a copy of the parts 1, 2, and 3 box set of the Spoken Books Uprising. I'll leave links in the show notes for that, but head over to dtkane.com/books, and all the links will be there, and consider buying it from me directly. That's no extra cost to you. In fact, it saves you money, but it actually makes me more money because I get to keep more royalties. So if you want to kind of give me a little extra support at no extra cost to you, consider that. And remember, there's bonus essays and character artwork in the box set, so maybe even worth picking up if you've read one or more of the books in their entirety already. Okay, so that is it for this week's episode. We'll read chapters 22 and 23 of Declaimer's Discovery next week. So until then, this has been D.T. Kane's Epic Fantasy Book Club. Thanks for listening to D.T. Kane's Epic Fantasy Book Club. If you liked today's episode, please consider rating and reviewing wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and hit that subscribe button and the bell so you get notified whenever new episodes become available. If you'd like to listen to back episodes or review the show notes, visit dtkane.com/podcast. D.T. Kane's novels are available for purchase at most major online retailers, or you can purchase directly from his website at www.dtkane.com/books. You can receive a free short story and sign up for D.T. Kane's mailing list at dtkane.com/email-signup. If you'd like to connect, you can find D.T. Kane on Facebook at D.T. Kane Author or Twitter at D.T. Kane Author, or send D.T. Kane an email at dtkane@dtkane.com. See you next week.